Alright guys, and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about why I'm going to be playing an Unholy Death Knight when Classic Wrath finally is released. So many people ask me why I'm not playing my Rogue anymore, or why I'm not playing my Priest anymore, and the truth is my heart doesn't really lie with any other class than the Death Knight. This is why in Classic I've played a Rogue, Hunter, Shaman, Warlock, Mage, and a Warrior. I've class hopped quite a lot from back in the day when Nestarius actually launched. It's not because I don't like any other classes or anything, it's just because I'm not really in love with any of them. I'm in love with the Unholy Death Knight, and today I'm going to explain why the Unholy Death Knight is such a good spec and class to play, and why you should give it a go. So first of all, why Unholy over Frost and Blood? Well, Frost is probably one of the most dullest specs in the game consistently throughout World of Warcraft in every expansion nearly. It's fun for a while, you know, you get some big crits, and I'm not dissing anyone who plays Frost, it's just, you know, it's just a very simple class rotation. It doesn't really light my candle. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do like playing really simple classes because it is really chill and it can be really fun just to jump into a battleground and destroy everyone with a few buttons, but it doesn't keep me interested long term. Blood spec is a little bit more interesting. I might give it a little bit of a spin when Classic Wrath does come out. It has some cool cooldowns which are really fun to use early on in Wrath, but again it is a fairly simple spec to play as a DPS spec. It's more interesting when you're a tank. But Unholy is much more interesting. I'm not saying it's a very complicated spec or anything. There is a lot more to think about. There's loads of different strats in order to max your DPS. Playing Unholy really does feel like you're playing an Affliction Warlock, but you don't have to wear a dress. Not that there's anything wrong with wearing a dress, it's just not really my jam. I've always preferred melee playstyles when playing any game, but melee playstyles that aren't brain dead, and the Unholy spec combines the funness of a brain dead melee playstyle with a more strategic ranged playstyle. The spec really is half melee, half ranged. You have abilities like Death Coil, which is actually a stolen Warlock ability. Sorry Warlocks, but we did technically have it in Warcraft 2. And Icy Touch is also a range, and you can continue to deal damage out of melee range with dots, and with the pet, and with the gargoyle. I like not having to constantly be in melee range in order to deal pressure in PvP. As Unholy DK, you're way more chilled about being kited by a ranged class, because you can still pack a punch and deal some pressure while not in melee range. Unholy has many abilities at its disposal. It's much better than just having 3 abilities that you just spam, which is what it's like playing Frost. You have Plague Strike to put up your Blood Plague dot, you have Icy Touch to put up your Frost Fever dot, and with your dots, your other abilities will deal more damage, so it's important to always keep your dots up. You can then spread these dots to other targets with the ability Pestilence. Then you have Blood Strike, which is more of a filler ability, simple melee attack to use up your blood runes, but it also boosts your damage by 5%. And your biggest damaging ability is Scare Strike, which in Wrath both consumes an Unholy rune and a Frost rune. So it's very important to learn rune control. Playing a spec like Frost or Blood, it's honestly, you can just spam abilities and you're good to go. You know the kind of meme where Death Knights don't know how to play their class, but still do loads of DPS anyway. I mean, it's pretty true for Frost and Blood. But with Unholy, you have to be much more careful not to nerf your DPS by using your runes in a careless way, and that does apply to Frost and Blood. I'm not saying they're totally brain dead, you can just headbutt the keyboard. There's still a little bit more to it than that, but again, like Unholy, there is a lot more to it. This means you're going to have to get a good add-on to display your runes much bigger and clearer on your screen. You've also got to be very careful not to cap on runic power, because that is a big DPS loss, so you have to understand exactly how much runic power you're generating with each rune consumed and with each individual ability, because obviously some abilities consume 2 runes, some consume 1, and when is the perfect time to squeeze in a Death Coil where it won't be a DPS loss. Then you've got to think about dot management. It isn't as simple as just keeping your dots up and maintaining them. It's always best to put your dots up during a combined Trinket proc and Rune of a Crusader proc. And when simulations come out, we'll have a better idea of how much extra attack power is needed for it to be worth to refresh your dots over using a Scare Strike. It's probably not going to be a lot, since the DPS difference between using Icy Touch and Plague Strike together instead of Scare Strike isn't huge. From my experience of playing private servers, I always used to refresh dots whenever I got some kind of trinket proc, and it did feel like a DPS increase. Especially when you refresh your dots a couple seconds before that trinket proc falls off, so that it continues to benefit from that increased damage even though the proc has fallen off. The same principle applies to using your gargoyle. The gargoyle will snapshot your stats at the precise time you summon it. And what you're looking for is increased attack power, mainly from strength, and haste. A perfect gargoyle pop will be during the opener, where your trinkets proc, you pop a strength trinket and a haste pot, Rune of the Crusader procs, Desolation is up, tier 10 or tier 9 buff is up, engineering or tailoring or any cool, professional stuff that you have is up, and then Bloodlust is up all at the same time, and then you pop your gargoyle and it does nutty damage. You also have a pet to manage, but honestly in PvE this is really easy, you just command the pet to attack, Bob's your uncle, but you do have some more advanced tricks that you can do in PvP with your pet, which are actually quite interesting. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about class fantasy. For people who actually care about this, it can be very important. I've always believed, for example, that most people who play hunters are dog people. Certain classes just connect with different people differently. As a kid, I've always been the weird rebellious one who listened to too much heavy metal music and watched way too many horror films. And I think this is why I was drawn to the Death Knight back in the day when I was like 13, which is basically not when I started playing WoW, but it's when I got my own PC to play WoW properly and not just on my dad's computer. It's also the reason why I'm drawn to certain heroes in MOBAs. I like the evil renegade vibe that the Death Knight has. Death Knights are considered so evil for what they've done in their life that serious RP players won't recruit them into their guilds. The Death Knight really does remind me of Billy from Stranger Things. He's the typical 80s bad boy who turns up in an all-muscle car with Metallica blazing and a leather jacket saying that nobody puts baby in the corner. And then you have classes like the Druid who can turn into a pussycat, right? There's definitely a big difference there. You really are a necromantic warrior. You use the powers of the Scourge Necromancers and combine it with the skills of a warrior that you mastered in your old life. This is why you start at level 55. You're already a very competent warrior. You were a hero of the Horde or the Alliance, and you have to learn when you get resurrected and master the ways of the Lich King's power as you level up and eventually use those powers against him to defeat him. And that, guys, is why I've always loved playing the Death Knight. I can't wait for Cataclysm as well, because I think in Cataclysm they become even more interesting with Dark Transformation and Festering Strike. The playstyle totally changes where you can where you focus on maintaining big dots that you snapshotted with trinket procs. So yeah, the Death Knight just gets better and better. It kind of wasn't that great, honestly, on WoD. It was alright in PvE, but not PvP. And then the big revamp in Legion, obviously, honestly makes me a bit envious that I don't play retail, because Death Knights at the moment in retail are also really, really cool as well. Still think they were better in Wrath of the Lich King though, and I just cannot wait for Classic Wrath to finally be released so I can finally actually play the class that I want to play in this game. But anyway, guys, I definitely rambled on long enough. My name is MetaGoblin. To my next video, ciao.